Hey everyone, welcome to Watches with Dennis, and on this episode we're going to do a Q&A, or a question and answers episode. It's not something I've done before. I know some other channels do it, and given we've crossed 100 subscribers, which is a big milestone for me, I figured let's try something a little bit different. I've had people that have messaged me or left comments on various videos that I've either not gotten around to trying to make an entire video about, or the question was such that I didn't think I could really adequately cover it that way, or I do have a video related to the topic, but maybe not exactly addressing the question as it was raised. So I've got 5 questions that I'm going to go ahead and go through today on this episode. And I guess if you like this, go ahead and comment below to let me know that you like this format, but also feel free to comment below with any questions. So hopefully it's easier for me to compile versus what got emailed or direct messaged or what was left on the other videos, so that this can just sort of be the place to gather those up, and then I'll have them available for the next episode. But I printed them off so I don't lose track. So first one I'm going to open with is probably, judging from this list, the most controversial one, which would be, why does Rolex suck? Okay, so that's a loaded question. And so it's, I wouldn't say that they do, but I guess if you were to ask me what sucks about Rolex, I think where I and a lot of people would agree is on what's been going on in terms of what they're bringing product to the market, the strategy. So as I've mentioned before, and as we discussed on our wrist shot episode about Rolex, the issue that's been happening lately is supply is not meeting demand. And I believe that's common for any luxury good, but it's gotten really bad in the case of Rolex, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. So what's happened is basically almost all Rolex models, other than the really expensive precious metal watches, and I suppose their Cellini line, which has never been all that popular, are now difficult to get. It used to be they had certain models that were always a struggle. Rolex Daytona was always a struggle. Rolex Submariner was always a struggle, as in you could not just walk into an authorized dealer in most instances and actually buy one of those watches. You needed to be on a wait list. You needed to have a buying history with the authorized dealer. They saved those for their preferred clients. But now that sort of wait list approach even applies to Datejusts and Oyster Perpetuals, just lines of watches that there used to always be plenty of that just weren't all that popular. They were popular, but not that popular. So that is, in my view, what sucks about Rolex is I think it's gotten too far into this exclusivity waitlist model. Like, I don't think the entire company's product line should be entirely waitlist shielded. It seems ridiculous, especially given that it's a company that, pandemics aside, produces 1 million watches a year. So while it's a luxury watch brand, it's not like they do a low volume. Where I want to draw a line, though, is I think there are some people who are either bitter about this marketing issue, and I do, as I noted, I do think it is an issue, or don't like that they think Rolex is too much of a marketing hype machine as it is, like that. And that is a fair point. So let me touch on that really quick. So by that, what I mean is, let's say you take another rival company like Omega, and you can find a comparable watch in terms of specs where Omega will match or beat, like on magnetic resistance, water resistance, materials used is similar, finishing is similar, and the Omega is several $1,000s less. So people will say, well, you're paying for the Rolex name in the case of Rolex, which I think is true. But they don't think it should be worth that. But obviously that's a value judgment. And as we know on the secondhand market, clearly Rolex is maintaining its value much better than Omega tends to. So while I get the criticism, it's like, that Rolex did good at marketing isn't really a bad thing. I suppose it's bad if you wanted to try and save more used and you just can't achieve the same savings on Rolex that you could on another watch manufacturer. But that's a good problem for Rolex to have, even if it's a bad problem for the secondhand market. And then, sort of a sour grapes thing. I think that happens. Rolex obviously has a lot of buyers that aren't into watches. So watch collectors face this increased pricing in part because so many people want Rolex, even though they don't really care about watches. They just know the name and the brand. So you get some sour grapes, I think, involved with that. And it's also popular to hate on things that are popular. So, there are those aspects too. I think the main thing when I see a question like, why does Rolex suck, that I want to stress is they do not make bad watches. And I think sometimes when people are mad at Rolex or dislike Rolex, and there are plenty of reasons to dislike their designs or anything, or their conservative approach to evolving their watches or whatever. There are lots of reasons to not be into Rolex, but I think it's disingenuous to claim that they make a bad product. Their watches are very good. So they are not a bad watchmaker, but I don't agree with all their policies. So that was our long one. I think the rest of these will go a little bit quicker, but question number 2 that I received. Have you seen the new Rado Captain Cook Ceramic? Would love to hear/see your take on this model. Okay, so I assume this is the Captain Cook high-tech ceramic because it's the only one I'm aware of, and I believe it's new. I'll put an image up on the screen so folks can see it. They have a few different flavors of this watch, and on the Rado website, it starts at $3,300 US. What's my take on the model? I like the look of the Captain Cook in general. I've never talked about Rado at all, much less the Captain Cook. However, as like a vintage-inspired diver, I think it's a pretty attractive watch line. I don't like this watch, but not because of the ceramic. It's actually the skeletonized dial. I am not a fan of skeletonized dials. I actually cannot come up with one off the top of my head that looks good. So, and I know other people are really big into them. So I think that's what it really comes down to. If you like being able to see the movement through the dial of the watch, you might like this one. It's not outlandish. It's not hard to read. So it's not like an egregious example that I disdain, but I don't like it. I don't like how it looks, which is too bad because the rest of the watch is fine. But that being said, there are plenty of other Captain Cook models that I do like the look of. In fact, all the rest of them I like more. So in that regard, about the only thing I sort of prefer about this one versus most of the others I'm familiar with is I don't believe this one has a date on it, or at least it wasn't obtrusive. Again, the other ones that I can recall, though, have the date in this fairly standard 3 o'clock position. So I think it looks all right. It's just sometimes with the diver, I sort of prefer no date, and I like date on other styles of watches, but that's just a preference thing. So anyway, I hope that helps, I guess. It should help at least letting you know what I thought of it, which was what the question was. Question number 3. Should I get a watch with a metal band? Okay, so commonly referred to as bracelet. In my opinion, yes. And here's why. In many instances with wristwatches, the companies will often offer a model with a variety of strap choices. Sometimes there's a metal bracelet, and then they might have a rubber band. They might have a leather strap. Might come on a NATO. We could spend a whole video talking about different strap choices, and probably not adequately cover any of them when we would do so. In my opinion, yes, you should. If you have the choice, you should get the watch with the metal bracelet. It's usually the most expensive option. But that being said, if you ended up wanting the metal bracelet later, I think it's just in general more difficult to get one secondhand or going back to the manufacturer, or what the manufacturer might charge you for the bracelet separate. Usually it's the best deal to get it with the watch. And it depends by company, but by and large, I don't think most of the other options like leather straps, rubber bands and such are all that special. There are plenty of third-party band and strap options that I think would easily meet any criteria you would want, any color you want, any comfort level that you would have. Bracelets are trickier. It's usually you go with the manufacturer. So it's easier to get a third party leather strap, for example. So for that reason alone, I just think it's better to go with the manufacturer for the metal bracelet and just go third party on the other stuff because there's so many other good options out there. Question number 4. So what is a microbrand? What is a microbrand? Well, in short, it's an independent watchmaker and company that produces a low volume of watches. How low is microbrand low? 2,000 units a year or less is what I've read and what I would agree with. So what's the value of a microbrand? And you can get really memey with this and start going about cutting out the middleman. We got to cut out the middleman is a big thing with watches and like the Kickstarter campaigns. And there are some fly-by-night microbrands. So my tongue-in-cheek joke is grounded in some reality. But they are able to often offer watches at a lower price point, given that, I mean, it's a mix of stuff. So you've got economy of scale issues, which don't play in the favor of the micro brand, but they tend to have smaller marketing budgets. They're targeting collectors in most cases. So, and with their limited production amounts, they only need to sell a certain quantity. They tend to use third-party movements, which are mass-produced, which does save them on that economy of scale front to some degree. And so you can get a lot of good, high-quality watchmaking craftsmanship at relatively low price points. It's also a good option, I would say, for people if you are someone that does not like to buy what everyone else is buying. So, for example, if you're someone and your price point is sort of in the Seiko range, there are micro brands you might want to consider if you're sick of just having Seikos all the time and you want something that no one else is wearing, or most likely that you would not encounter anyone else to wear. So, sort of that hipster thing of wanting to do something because it's different. Well, micro brands offer that. So that's an option. I don't currently have any micro brands. I've looked at them from time to time. My biggest issue that I've run into and that's not true for all micro brands, it's hard to paint with a broad brush, but because of the third party movement use is my theory, which I inherently don't have an issue with. There's sort of a sameness to a lot of them. I think a lot of them look this, like if you tell me, hey, I'm looking at a micro brand, I'm immediately going to think, Seamaster knockoff, layout diver watch. It's going to be a blue or black dial. You're going to have the date at the 6 o'clock position. It's going to be 316L steel. I have all this stuff in my mind of like, I'm going to immediately think I know exactly what you're talking about without you naming a brand or much less a model. Now that's not always true, but it seems like a lot of micro brands are just kind of going that diver route and they all kind of taste the same to me. So I would say definitely look into companies. There are some very popular micro brands that are doing some interesting things. So there are good ones and they are affordable too. So it's definitely something worth checking out if that falls into your interest camp. The final question I have is quartz bad? No, it's not bad. It's more affordable than a mechanical watch and it's more accurate than a mechanical watch. So quartz watches mathematically are superior to mechanical watches on two major fronts. They're also cheaper to service, and servicing is normally consisting of a battery swap. So the reason, though, that a lot of people into watches are into mechanical watches is I'd say a couple of things. One, it's sort of just the romantic notion of something that's not using electricity achieving timekeeping. It's both being a throwback and just there's the romanticism of the idea of it, the idea that springs and gears are keeping track of all of this stuff for you. Then there's also the engineering aspect, which is really attractive. And that is just sort of like pushing the mechanical condition from the human condition, using our abilities as human beings to make these things as accurate as possible without relying on circuitry to do it for us. How perfect can we make it? Knowing that what the goal is basically to hit the quartz level, that how good can we get it without cheating and using a crystal that oscillates and electricity to power it. So it's for that. It's like, why climb a mountain? Because it's there. So that's part of it too, is just to see what we can do as engineers. We as the watchmakers and people like me just buy them. But so that's the thing. There are some people that will kind of be snobbish about it and just not be interested in quartz. And that's just a taste thing. So, and I understand that, because if the aspects are the romantic and the challenge on the mechanical front, quartz is not going to scratch that itch for you. But in terms of high quality timepieces, there are some fascinating ones that have occurred and continue to occur in quartz. There's cutting edge work that happens in quartz. You have companies like Citizen and Grand Seiko that continue to go for high accuracy quartz and really try and push the envelope in the quartz movement front. They're not just throwing in some cheap quartz movement and calling it a day. So there are things to explore there as well, not to mention hybrid systems like spring drive, which in and of themselves are really quite interesting. So no, quartz is not bad, but it might not be for you. You just have to decide what is it about watches that you enjoy. Well, that's all the questions I had to cover for this episode. So again, comment below if you like this format, if you thought it worked. Feel free to leave any questions. And if you enjoy these videos and want to know when I have a new one coming out, just click the subscribe button and that'll take care of that. And otherwise, I hope everyone has a great week. Take care.